Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Okay. Well, the news is that there is no power at home, and hopefully this laptop will not discharge very soon. Um, so I hope we'll be able to complete our time without either my telephone discharging because I'm using my mobile hotspot, and okay, let's get going. We were yesterday we were talking about Janapadas, and I was basically trying to say that these were the early republics in ancient India, and most of them are so old or were so old that they were perhaps the first known republics of the world. You must understand, a republic is where there is some sort of rule of the people by themselves. Okay, that's how you essentially define a republic. Okay, where people are basically ruling themselves. So monarchies, where you have only one single source of power, that does not constitute a republic. Neither does a dictatorship, even if it is a benevolent one, even if somebody is doing good. For example, Oliver Cromwell in England thought his dictatorship would do good for the country. Even that is not considered to be a republic. So the polis in ancient Greece, some people say these were republics, but some people dispute that because there is a concept in the Greek polis which basically emphasizes that it is the only the citizens who can be part of the decision making process in a polis, and they had slaves, and these slaves basically did not have any rights, they did not have any say in matters pertaining to governance. And you will also see that they had this category of foreigners whom they called aliens, who would be given residential rights, who would get all the uh, conveniences that were available to the citizens, but they would have no say whatsoever in the ruling of the uh, police. So one outstanding example of this is Aristotle. Aristotle was, he studied in Athens. He grew up, yeah, Manisha. You raised your hand, Manisha. That basically means I have to answer you.
Touch answer.
Okay, right. So, uh, basically, what we see is that Aristotle grew up and flourished mostly in Athens only. Uh, but the main problem uh, with Aristotle was that he was not an Athenian by birth. Okay, he came from a province called Stagira, and therefore he did not have the uh, rights and privileges uh, of citizens that were that were given to the citizens of Athens. Unlike that, the Janapadas in India, if you look at them, you will see that the Janapadas have porous borders. Okay, porous as Porous. Porous means that actually, strictly speaking, they didn't really have any great borders. Most people could come and uh, settle in a Janapada, or they could be passing through a Janapada, and there wasn't any kind of uh, necessity to basically prove what their intentions were and all that, which was a must in the Greek polis. If you went from one polis to another, then they would ask you, why have you come here? What is the necessity? But if you look at the Indian Janapadas, the Janapadas had porous borders, if at all they had any borders. And these were basically taken care of by an elder of the Janapada who would be made in charge of the security and all the things, other things that come with governance in the Janapada. So, like I said, if you see the old Janapada, I told you was a word used by B.A. Salator. He said Janapada is not the correct uh, word, it should be Janapada. And we have this films in Telugu which were called Janapada cinemas, and films like Gandi Kota Rahasyam, those kind of films, which show the king living in palaces. But the truth of the matter is that they didn't live in palaces. A closer to the truth depiction of what a Janapada was was shown in this particular serial that came in the 90s. It was called Chanakya. I think it came on Doordarshan. And it depicted uh, the Janapada, which was Pataliputra. And that is a fairly accurate depiction of how the chief of the Janapada and his ministers were. They weren't living, they aren't shown as people living in palaces. They are shown as people living in ordinary dwellings like the other uh, people of the Janapada. The only thing that distinguished them was the type of headgear. Okay, a turban. The turban would be different from the regular the turban has been very funnily from right from north to south. The turban has been a part of the clothing of Indians right up to the 19th century, and in villages even in the 20th century. A lot of people even today wear turbans in proper villages. The turban has been one of the uh, pan-Indian uh, clothing, if we may call it that. And then the other one was the dhoti and the angavastra, which were there. So it was the turban, the angavastra, and if it was the chieftain of the Janapada, then he carried a stick, not an ordinary stick, but a stick embellished with usually the head of a lion. Okay, on top of the stick, you would have the head of a lion. That was used by the chieftain to mark him out as the chieftain. And he used to have advisors. We can't call them ministers. He kept advisors, and these advisors were again distinguishable from the rest of the population only by their headgear and the colors of the angavastra. Angavastra is that which is worn on the shoulder, and these usually changed from republic to republic. Now, in India, our national animal is the tiger, but for centuries it has been the lion, which is the animal that people have identified strength and power with. Okay, so with the exception of Durga, sometimes Kali, uh, who ride a tiger, who are shown sitting on a tiger. The rest are all shown as sitting or having symbols which are lions. Okay, and it is there in the names like Singh, which we think is used only by the Sikhs. It's not something that is used only by the Sikhs. If you go to Bihar, if you go to Uttar Pradesh, you'll find a lot of Brahmins also who use the name Singh. I mean, they join Singh to their name. Singh is nothing but Sinha. Okay, in Sanskrit, the animal is called Sinham, and in Hindi, it became Sinha, and people found it difficult to say Sinha, so they made it Singh. Okay, so that's what Singh means, a lion. Okay, he's like a lion. It's a metaphor, an imagery. And you will also see that it's not just up there in the north, even in the south, people have surnames like Simha. Okay, there are a lot of people who have their surnames, not surnames, their last names as Simha, or a part of their name as Simha. Arguably the greatest cricketer of Hyderabad was M.L. Jaisimha. Okay, so Simha is again lion. Okay, and if you go to the western states like Maharashtra and Gujarat, and again this surname is also there in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. Apart from Singh, they also use Sinha. Like we had a finance minister, Yashwant Sinha, uh, who was a part of the BJP but is no longer a part of the BJP. And then you have the great actor Shatrughan Sinha. Shatrughan actually is Shatrughna, the brother of Rama. Not Shatrughan, it is their inability to say Shatrughna that it made him Shatrughan. They use Sinha. And in Maharashtra, actually it is, they don't pronounce that as Sinha, they pronounce it as Sia. That is how they pronounce it. Sia is how they pronounce the name, though it is written Sinha only, but they pronounce it as Sia. So what we need to understand is that the lion somehow has greater priority than the tiger, despite the fact that the tiger is the, what should I say, the tiger is the uh, national animal, and but we believe in the lion. Okay, and I suppose you know that as an aside, let me put it this way. India is the only country where there are both tigers and lions. Okay, that is the only country where there are both these animals, though not together in the same forest. Okay, they are in different forests, and but they are there in the same place. What we have is the Asiatic lion. So that was the lion was used as a symbol of one's authority. I won't call it power, because power can be, it can also be brutal. Power doesn't necessarily have the responsibility that comes with authority. Authority is power with a lot of responsibilities, with a lot of do's and don'ts. So you will see that the this thing of the office of the chieftain had authority, and the symbol of authority was most definitely the lion. And if you look at the Janapadas, they had a village council, which is the basis for what we today call the Gram Sabhas in village, in villages. Okay, so they had a council. The system of the punch, or 5 people, and the system of immediate dispensation of justice was something that was there in the Janapadas. Okay, so you had the Panchayat system, not the modern Panchayat Raj system that we have today in the country. That is not the kind of a thing. They had a panchayat where one of the members would obviously be the chieftain, and he would pick up one or two people, and the disputed, the parties who are uh, having a dispute have the right to nominate one person to the punch. So if there are two parties in the dispute, they would nominate one each. So that is how the punch would happen. If there were three parties, then three people will nominate, but they wouldn't have disputes with more than three parties. So this was an immediate form of listening to a case, and on the basis of Dharma, please remember, that is the underlying thread throughout. On the basis of Dharma and on the basis of Nyaya, which, Neeti, Shastra, I told you, these people had to be acquainted with those. And these people would keep the Dharma and the Neeti that was required for the examination of a particular dispute, and they would then provide Nyaya, which is, you can call that justice if you want. Okay, so life in ancient India was very simple. Okay, it was in the village. Everybody knew everybody else in the village. In most villages, even today, villages have become big now. Most of them have become towns. We have very few villages. But in these villages which are still there, everybody knows everybody else. And therefore, a trial by the Panchayat was not a very difficult exercise, because somebody would be carrying a reputation which they build over a certain period of time. Somebody might have built a positive reputation. Somebody might have built a reputation as a person of integrity, a person of sincerity, rectitude. Somebody might have, on the other hand, built a negative reputation, a reputation of being a cheat, all those things. But despite that, the Janapadas did not punish people purely on the basis of their reputations alone. So they did take into consideration the evidence that was provided by people, and only after taking the evidence that was provided by the people that you find that the judgment is passed. I may have told you this before, and if I haven't, well, I'm telling you now. And if I have told you this before, I'm telling this again, because it is worth telling you this. There is a novel by Premchand, okay, a great novelist, Hindi novelist, but surprisingly, he wrote in the Urdu script. Okay, he wrote Hindi, but he wrote it in the Urdu script. And Premchand wrote a novel called Panch Parameshwar. Okay, and this was at a time when Gandhi was saying that India lives in its villages, and Swaraj basically would mean Gram Swaraj. For Gandhi, the real Swaraj was the Gram Swaraj. And the Panchayat system that he advocated was the Panchayat system that was followed in the Janapadas, that which is followed in the Janapadas. So, inspired by this, I think it was the year 1932. I could be wrong by 1 or 2 years this way or that, but I think it is 1932. Premchand, Munshi, he was a Munshi by profession. So Munshi Premchand wrote this wonderful novel called Panch Parameshwar. So let me quickly tell you the story. It is about two characters essentially, and it is also about Hindu-Muslim unity. And this is about one character called Algu Chaudhary, who's a Hindu, and another character called Jumman Sheikh, who was a Muslim. And Algu Chaudhary and Jumman Sheikh are very good friends until they have a problem and they decide to part ways as friends. They stop being friends. Now, Jumman Sheikh runs into a problem with another person in the village, and to resolve his case, a panchayat meeting is convened. And when Jumman Sheikh is asked to pick up his representative to sit on the panchayat, well, you have to call it a board, I guess. So to sit on the panchayat board, he picks up his friend turned enemy, Algu Chaudhary. He picks him up and says, "This is my representative." Everybody is shocked. One, because they are no longer friends, they become bitter enemies. And the second thing is that the other party of the dispute is a Hindu. Okay, is a Hindu. So people try to tell Jumman Sheikh, please don't pick up a Hindu, pick up a Muslim so that you will get some justice on your side. But Jumman says, I believe in the panchayat. I believe it is God who speaks through the panch, the 5 people, once they sit on the panchayat board. Okay, that they used to sit under a tree. There would be a platform under a tree on which they would sit. So Algu Chaudhary, his enemy, is picked up by Jumman Sheikh. And what we find is that Jumman Sheikh wins the case. Everybody, including Algu Chaudhary, decides that Jumman Sheikh is the one who needs justice and not his rival. And then somebody from the village asks Algu Chaudhary, Algu Chaudhary, why did you, give your verdict in favor of Jumman Sheikh, knowing that he's your enemy? And Algu says that once I sat there among the punch as one of the punch, I stopped being Algu Chaudhary. I started being somebody who would see the truth and dispense justice or nyaya based on the principles of Dharma and Neeti. So he said, when I was there, I didn't feel like Algu Chaudhary. That person in front of me did not feel like Jumman Sheikh, my enemy. I felt like I was carrying the responsibility of this Dharma and Neeti, and that I had to provide Nyaya to that person, whoever that person may be. He is in the right, the opposition party is in the wrong. So I was party to this verdict, saying that it is Jumman Sheikh who is the victor. So he said, Algu Chaudhary did not speak. So that is when people say, oh, so Parameshwar or God, not God as God, but the entire spirit, the divine spirit that sits in the universe, envelops the universe. I told you, universe is seen as a living system. So this living system of the universe is something that permeates into the consciousness of those people who have been entrusted with the task of protecting dharma, neeti, and providing nyaya to the person who deserves it, and danda, punishment, danda to to that party which lost the case. Okay, so that is why it is called Panch Parmeshwar. So what Premchand was trying to convey was essentially the life in the Janapada. He was trying to show how people were completely permeated, or they ingested the spirit of dharma and neeti in themselves, and how that puts a great deal of responsibility on the people in the Panch or the Panchayat, and how their personal considerations do not get into way of the judgments that these people are giving. They do not get into that. That is the point that was being made by Premchand. And this is the Gram Swaraj that Gandhi was later on talking about. And Gandhi believed in the Indian villages. He believed in the village life. He believed that the Indian villages were basically capable of giving instant justice, which was based in Dharma and Neeti, if people followed Sanatana Dharma. Like I said, he rarely calls it Hindu. Okay, he calls it Sanatana Dharma most of the time. So he said, that is what we want. And he said, this industrial capitalist civilization, which basically has profit as its motive, compromises on morality, and therefore the kind of rule that you see of the British here, he said that is immoral. He says the Muslims have come to India from outside, but they have not ruled immorally as the British have done. He said the Muslims also went by some tenets, which was the Islamic tenets. And he said at one level, all these systems of thought, be it Islam, Christian, Sanatana Dharma, all of these things, ultimately, he said, are different roads to the same path, to the same destiny. Okay, they are different paths to the same destination. So he said, as long as somebody believes in these principles, then they will rule as per their conscience. So conscience was what he wanted, and therefore he made that very famous statement. He said, I like your Jesus Christ. He told this to an Englishman. Okay, he said, I like your Jesus Christ, but I don't like you Christians, because you have forgotten the teachings of Jesus Christ, who was such a great person. So he says, I like your Jesus Christ, but not you Christians. You have forgotten the teachings of Christ. So for Gandhi, it was like to go back to the age of the Janapadas, which were ruled by wisdom of Dharma and Neeti, and they were small units. They were not very big units. And if you remember from last semester, when I talked to you about Rousseau also said nation states are a very bad kind of organizations because they are so huge. The nation states are so huge, nobody knows how to administer them properly. Nobody knows who wants what. So that is why he said, I prefer a city-state like Geneva. Okay, he said, I prefer a city-state like Geneva, because then you'll have a small population where everybody knows everybody. Okay, I've run out of time. That is as far as Janapadas are concerned. Tomorrow I'll pick up Ganapada and Mahajanapadas, the transition. Thank you very much. Very kind of you, 5 ladies, for coming. Thank you.
Sir.
Yes.
Bye, sir.
Okay. Bye. Have a happy weekend. See you on Monday. Tomorrow is second Saturday. So I guess it's a holiday. If it is not, I'll put a link. So just check your WhatsApp once. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
No.